Welcome to Off the Wire, the podcast that helps you curb your cybersecurity risk and tackle technology challenges. I'm Tanner and I'm joined by Anthony. We're two IT executives with 35 years of experience. Let's start the show. Welcome back everyone to Off the Wire. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're actually just going to discuss a single topic, not a lot of outline, just kind of go back and forth and kind of hear each other's opinions on something that I think everyone is talking about, but maybe we haven't talked about as much on the show. But before we jump into that, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. It's the best way for you to be able to find our content. If you subscribe and turn on notifications, as soon as we post new content, you can find it, and it keeps you up to date with everything we're doing. And if you find value in the show, we'd like you to share it. Share it on social media, share it your personal social media, or to a colleague, or maybe just a close friend who you think also would get value from our show. So Anthony, we're doing something different tonight. We decided to kind of just bring up a topic and go to work talking about it. I think originally it was kind of your thought on this episode, so you want to introduce what we're going to be talking about and get us started?
Yeah. So we're going to discuss AI and what we think the impact on the job market is going to be in really all aspects. And I do get the feeling that Tanner and I probably won't see 100% eye to eye. I'm sure there's going to be some common ground that we to share. This is something that really it's been on my mind quite a bit, just where I've got a daughter that's 18 years old. And I mean, I've got some that are a few years older and a few years younger. I really think about the impact of AI and how's it going to impact our children. Not so much worried about myself. Not saying it's not a little bit worried out there, maybe 15, 20 years from now, but really about our children and which direction that goes. And, talking to my daughter and giving her advice on what jobs to take. You might be surprised at some of the things I've told her.
Yeah, so I mean, dive into that a little bit, Anthony. I mean, a young daughter as well, and so it's a little bit. I guess she's a little ways away from deciding her career path, but we know AI is going to be an impact. We already see impact. I think it's in what we do specifically, and I'm not saying every industry. I think some industries are already more impacted than other industries, but in what we do, I think we're seeing impact. It's not, I would say, drastic, and I don't know when drastic is. That could be a year from now or 10 or 20 or who knows. So what do you tell her there? Are you just giving her only her advice on like only roles that you think won't be impacted, or how do you give her advice?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate because she's looking at the healthcare industry and she's looking at becoming a nurse and maybe even doing like a nurse practitioner after she gets her hours in. But I told her up front, so anyone that wants to be a nurse, like you can't just jump into school and get accepted in a nursing program. Like there's a wait time everywhere you go. And I was telling her this up front. I was like, don't be upset when you start going to UNCW and just can't immediately get into the nursing program. We went through orientation and stuff, and they made it blatantly obvious that you can't do that. There's 200 to 300 applicants every semester, and they only accept 60. Anyways, she said, well, maybe I should just go for computer science or IT. And surprisingly, I suggested, I don't know that I would do that. I don't know that I would do that right now. Any job that, there's like physical interaction, I feel like it's safe. I think there's ways that they can leverage AI to help those positions, but there's a lot of jobs that they will impact more so than others. And surprisingly enough, I went to the doctor just a couple of days ago, and he's a PA, and he's got a son that just graduated, and somehow we got to talking about AI. I was like, "Well," I said, "At least she's going for the healthcare industry, like, she's safe," and he's like, "Yeah, I think a nurse might be safe." He's like, "But a job like mine?" He was concerned about, PAs down the road. And anyways, we got to talking about regulation and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of people out there that have a little concern. I've heard it from lawyers, from doctors, technical people. I do think cybersecurity, I see a lot of people that are in cybersecurity that are looking for jobs, which is kind of scary because, it's just 6 months ago to a year ago, we're seeing that there's a national shortage for cybersecurity people, which I didn't really agree with when I saw that article because I knew a lot of people were looking for jobs in cyber. But I think it's somewhere between they are using AI to streamline how many people they need in like a SOC and stuff like that. And it's in conjunction, it's them outsourcing overseas. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to say how much of an impact AI is having on cybersecurity right now with the outsourcing happening at the same time. But I do think there's an impact right now on it. I just don't know how much it is.
Yeah, I mean, There's definitely an impact. I think it's hard to say, at least from my perspective. There are things as we're learning more about AI at work, there are things that I feel like AI is there's almost like a binary response. There's either completely blown away or there's frustrated that it's not working, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I get a lot of like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much time that saved me." And then the same thing in the same breath almost, or maybe even the next prompt, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it doesn't understand me. It doesn't understand what I want." Or it does, but it's like too wordy. And even the other day I was doing something that really did save me some time. I'd say it probably saved me an hour, but it's not the 100x I think that sometimes people claim. Like I had to have it rework like some questions I was coming up with, and kind of an outline, and definitely did save me like an hour. But I still spent like I would say like 40 minutes. I had to go back and forth with the prompt, changing certain things, reworking questions. What I have found also, and this is just my personal opinion, but there's still, at least in LLMs, large language models, there's still an innate like even when I get a response, I can almost like, and I'm not calling anybody out. So if you're listening, I'm not calling you out if you do this. We use AI to help us with our social media posts and stuff too. But you can very easily tell someone that has a social media post completely written by AI. I mean, I can
Yeah.
spot it. It's almost like there's a blinking light. I can see it. I can see exactly, and just using LLMs enough that it sticks out. And what I have found, and maybe this is kind of another topic, I enjoy using AI to help me, but I don't enjoy seeing AI content.
Yeah.
Like I think it helps me, but if it helps somebody else and their content, I completely blow through those stuff. So when I see like a post completely generated by I like blow through it. I just like, whatever. Go to the next one. To me, I want the original thought. And maybe we're just, kind of in an early form of AI, but I feel like there's still it feels like the original thought is us and it's basically playing a game of copycat with us. Do you feel
Yeah.
that way at all?
Yeah, but also I think a little bit is and I've seen courses out there for prompt engineering courses, literally
Mm-hmm.
just learning to do prompts, and we saw a thing in the news, it's been a while back, but I believe it was the Shopify CEO basically instructing he had a memo to all his employees, they need to be learning AI, and I don't know that he called out prompt engineering, but I think that's what he was looking for is you need to be able to leverage AI, and you're right, so, like, when I the telltale sign on social media is you'll see, like, the little icons, that link
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or
emojis.
IGBT does, and if I see those, I'm automatically just not reading it.
Or the hyphens, the long hyphen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of long hyphens. Yeah. It's there's some telltale signs, and it's not that I just don't want to see AI completely generated. The other day I was totally, unrelated to what we do as work, but I was reading an article on a hobby, and at the bottom it actually just said AI generated. And
Yeah.
I know this sounds crazy, but I actually just discounted everything that I read. I literally did. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna like give that the credence. So there is something there. I don't know if we're just on the precipice of that being better or if we're just gonna get to a point where we can't recognize it. There is something like warmer, I feel like, that humans write, and I don't know how to describe it when you can tell, at least now with the current generation tech we have, you can kind of tell if they use it as a help to them, you basically can't tell. If they use it to completely generate it, it's very obvious and it feels very hollow and it doesn't sound warm to me.
Agree with you a little bit. I think for the
Okay.
most part, you're right. A lot of it, though, I think, is the lack of knowledge in, generating, information from
Yeah.
AI. We actually trained one. It was kind of we didn't use this in any form or fashion, like officially, but I trained one to basically imitate someone I knew and did a lot of training on it and basically said the location, the position of the person and you wouldn't confuse the 2, don't get me wrong, but if you didn't know that person and you were to talk to that chat client, you would think that it's a real person, a little more so than not. I found a thing on Reddit that I was using it and for a different purpose than the people on Reddit were using it for. They had prompt training to make the AI sound so human that they couldn't get caught cheating in school, I believe was the use case. I just wanted something that didn't sound like an AI
Yeah.
text that it pumped out. So I utilized that and, I would use it for some things and when you would read it, I mean, it would even dumb itself down. Yeah.
Level words and stuff.
And
Yeah, I found. For me, at least, if I need, like, a little more warmth in it, I actually just will add on and be very human-like to the prompt,
Yeah.
and that's whenever you do see it. And then you're right, it's a very catch-22 thing because we want to use AI to enhance our abilities, right? There's a lady that works with me that is a very good writer, and I joke around, I say, "Hey," we'll just call her Anne. I say, "AI makes me sound like Anne," because she's just such a good writer, right?
Yeah.
But then, at the same time, like, if it's not us and people that know you, I mean, like, you're not gonna be like, oh, pull a quick one over on them. Like, oh, Anthony all of a sudden got a lot smarter. Or he got he doesn't make any grammar mistakes anymore. He used to make them like every other email, right? But so people that know you, and then like, how do you feel about that? I think there's just a lot of different like responses to people that use AI to help them in their job. I think there's some people that almost like discount the work because they feel like you're almost taking a shortcut or you're kind of like cheating, right? You're like, oh, this wasn't really you. But I mean, impact is going to be there. I don't know. Someone told me, I don't know where I heard this on. It was a previous mentor or what, but I heard someone say that I really have kept in my head that things are never as good as they seem and they're never as bad as they seem. That if someone predicts the AI is going to take over, let's say 20% of roles, I think I've heard, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard 20% of jobs within 10 years. That's feels like the number I've heard or something around there. 20, maybe it could be different depending on the person, but it seems like I'm going to call it like the reasonable take.
Yeah.
It could be 30. We got 5 years as a society to live, and there's people that say this is 30 years out. Somewhere in the middle is where we'll land. I'm sure it won't be 30 years out, and I'm sure it won't be next year. I have found that typically is the way things kind of flush out. They definitely happen. I have no, I'm not naive to think that like there's not going to be impact from AI. There 100% will, but will it be as big as some people claim? Probably not. Will it be somewhere in the middle somewhere that really nobody knows? Probably. But at the same time, at least for us, now I can't speak for everyone in every role and every career, but for us, we literally are not able to get all that we need to get done. So at least for now, we see it as a blessing. We're thinking to ourselves, there's 100% of what we want to do. Maybe we're getting, I'm going to just quote a number, 70% of what we want to do done. We need that other 30% done too. So this could be a game changer in that regard.
One thing that recently has happened too, and I didn't know this until it was actually our executive assistant was telling me about the one big beautiful bill, and that's a lot of news about that. But one of the things in there was a thing on AI,
Yeah.
but basically
No,
where they
yeah.
can't roll out any laws or regulations to curtail AI. I know there's already existing stuff in place, but that's something I think about. And people like that's a pretty big deal. And just thinking about the Hollywood writers that were striking, a couple years ago. Do you remember that, Tanner? Where they had AI, like you can't use AI to. I can't remember the specifics in it, but there was something in there where they didn't want the use of AI to be writing stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a few years ago, and thinking about it, like, that was pretty smart of them to be thinking about that at the time. Do you think how much of an impact do you think regulation is gonna hinder?
I would say I think there's going to be some regulation. I don't know to extent what it'll be because I also maybe this is just a pessimistic view of society, but typically if there's money to be made in something, people are going to jump at that.
Oh,
I've seen a lot of critique of Sam Altman right now because early on in his OpenAI career, he talked about how he felt like they were going to be nonprofit, how they were going to kind of be the AI that's the good of the world. And now that there's substantial money to be made, it seems like he may be changing course there somewhat. So it's tough for me to lean on the morality of society to regulate it to a point that it might need to be.
yeah,
At the same time, I don't know. I mean, every time I feel like throughout history, I try to be an optimist and a pessimist at the same time. I try to basically look through that lens with any important decision in my life. Like, what's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? Throughout history, there have been many, many times where someone thought the entire world human race would be wiped out. There was the Industrial Revolution. Uh, you know, we literally at one point in society, every single person or nearly every single person farmed, and now we don't do that anymore.
yeah,
A good example I heard the other day is prior to 2005, or really realistically, mobile app developer wasn't even a job that existed, and that's 20 years ago. We're only talking about 20 years ago. There are jobs now that didn't exist 20 years ago. Are there other jobs out there? Are there things that we want to accomplish as a human race or as human beings that we haven't been able to accomplish for whatever reason because we don't have maybe the time or ability to? And someone's going to say, well, AI could think of the ideas for us. I don't know. I'm curious to see kind of where we go with AI, but I still think that the genius of AI is actually the combination and kind of collection of human knowledge
Yeah.
and human thought and human discussion. And I read an article the other day that talked about how there was trouble, they were having trouble training LLMs on synthetic data, that they were running out of original data, like original Reddit threads, and because there's only so many made per day, Twitter, so on and so forth. And they needed like a lot more to train. So they were actually starting to create synthetic data sets to train the models on. And the performance was way worse. Like they were not getting they were not getting the effect of having those human conversations to lean on. So I don't know. I think I'm in the middle. I think right now there's a lot of, and to me, AI can help enhance and take care of a lot of those like easy things, but easy but time consuming things is maybe the way I'll put it. And then obviously some advanced stuff too. But why do we do analysis? Why do we think about cybersecurity, like some sort of cybersecurity initiative that we're doing? It's because there's something out there we're trying to respond to. Are we at a point where we kind of say, hey, AI, I'm trying to run a cybersecurity thing. What do I need to focus on? Is AI going to have the conversations with the vendors? Maybe when we get to agent based AI, that's a situation. Is AI going to implement the software? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we're definitely, in my opinion, and I'm sure I'll be wrong on the exact year. I feel like we're still a ways away from that kind of level. But as far as being able to collect your thoughts, being able to organize yourself, being able to even do analysis, some of those other things, we're close. I don't know that we're there yet. We've been doing some testing with trying to do simple language query. And I'm going to be honest, we've been really disappointed where AI is right now. There is nothing like you can train AI on data. And maybe that's part of the problem is like AI is trained on such a small subset of human data. Maybe that's a better way to say it because it's trained on conversations we have online. And yes, some of that is like, I think the big things, right? Like how do I plumb a house, right? Or how do I fix a toilet? Maybe that's had been had online, but to me, like when you get into like at least in our field, a lot of those conversations have never been had. What data set I think in your like just thinking maybe from our perspective as co-ops, what data set has anyone put out on the internet talking about what kind of resiliency we want to put in our grid and where our outages are in relation and why we need to certain put additional, I guess, either do some additional work to certain circuits to increase reliability. That conversation has never been had online. It's like that's an AI data set that does not exist. Like ChatGPT doesn't know about that. It couldn't tell me anything about most of our systems. And even to train it on our systems is almost impossible unless you want to spend an egregious amount of money doing a private AI model and then actually train it on the data. But then it doesn't understand the data and you're having to describe the data. I would just say, like, we have been disappointed with how fast we can move in that regard. And we think this is like probably one of the most powerful things for us that we want to use AI for is being able to have people do analysis with just simple questions. For example, right, that would be a great example. Like our engineer sitting there is, we need to increase reliability in this particular district. What are the top 10 ways we can do it? And what's the most dollar to value ratio we can get? You can't do that right now. I would love to do that. I think that's awesome. And then, man, we could take more time actually doing it, doing those things, less time thinking about that. But I don't know. We're not there yet. And that could be a year from now, for all I know, or 2 years. I'm impressed every day, and then I'm frustrated in some ways every day.
We've been trying to do some training on our own data with our local AI model, which I know you guys have too. And not gonna lie, like, it had a lot of hallucinations, but I've seen enough times where it did work, and I was just completely baffled at how efficient it was. One was just the very first time I messed with data, was with ChatGPT, and it was synthetic. It was data that I downloaded, like it was a table, and I copied it and put it into a spreadsheet, and it was people traveling. And, it was a huge list, and looking at it, like, I was like, "Okay, this is just a bunch of travel dates for people," and it talked about the flight and where they were going to and from. And looking at it, I couldn't make a whole lot out of it, but I pumped it in ChatGPT and had it run analytics against it. And what things do you see? Do you see anything wrong with this? And basically, just what kind of trends and analysis do you see from this? I can't recall what the trends were, but it was pretty impressive. It was talking about the people that are doing the most and stuff like that. But when I asked the discrepancies out of this huge list, there was someone that was double booked on a flight. Another example, we did I'm trying to remember it, but it was basically our DNS logs from our Active Directory. And we had an internal IP that was hitting a Russian website. And we're
Mhm.
trying to figure out, one, who is it? And we had a couple people look through that log. Now, this log was huge. It was like a 1.7 gig document.
Yeah.
And they looked for a half hour, couldn't find the offending IP. I pumped that thing into the AI and it found it within it was under a minute for, cybersecurity. If you're looking through log files,
Mm.
tell me, like, if it works and it's accurate, there's no way that AI, a human could compete with AI.
I challenge you on something.
Yeah.
What if it didn't find something?
So now when that happened, I 100% validated it in the text
Okay,
file.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I did not blindly, because when I saw it, I was like, I'm not trusting this blindly. And that's something that I think people can get lackadaisical on
Yep.
and not
Mhm.
double check their stuff. People doing stuff like for social media posts, like, you've got to be checking everything
Yep.
that you're pumping out.
Yeah. That's a big thing for us as we start to deploy more AI. The responsibility of work and a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Yeah.
I see a lot of benefit now, at least in what we do, and even in the small medium business world. I think there are times in a job where you kind of have a very like regular cadence to what you're doing, right? And then there are periodic times where you have to like really scale out what you're doing for a particular task and then kind of scale back down to a certain level. Like log review, that would be a good example. I think if you're doing a lot of policy creation, maybe proofreading, like there are certain times where it just feels like you could have 7 people help you out in doing whatever you're doing. And then there's certain times where you're like, if someone is helping me out right now, I'd have to be explaining everything I'm doing to them. And I'm not saying we are gonna improve. I mean, new AI is gonna be coming out. But for right now, the times where you have to scale yourself, where you're like, you wish you had 10 of yourself, AI is great at that. It is like superb at any of that kind of stuff where it's, I need to write this thing. I wish I had 3 writers that work for me and I wish I had someone to proofread it. And then I wish I could just say yes or no on what they find, on what product they put out. AI is awesome at that. I mean, it can be sometimes 5x, 10x time savings. What I found is we've all had a colleague come up to us and be like, "Hey, can I help you out in something?" You're like, you kind of know that like if they helped you, it would only help you like 5% more. And for those times, I have not found AI to be hugely beneficial yet. I'm not saying it won't get there, but there are times whenever, and maybe that's specific to job role. I mean, there could be a lot of things there, but what I hope at least, hope for us in our industry is that we can take those times where we really need to scale ourselves and we can take more time for the time that really, what we're doing and where we don't necessarily need 10 of ourselves. We can have more of that time, more strategic focus, because there's just a lot of things you have to explain. I was thinking the other day, we were working through an issue with payments, and I've worked at the co-op 17 years, and I don't know that I could accurately explain all the different possible scenarios I've come across. I remember them. If they come up again, they like kind of pop up in my mind, but like I don't think I could write it out in a book. Like right now, I couldn't write it out. I probably couldn't even write you 2 pages of stuff, but if it hits me, if I've experienced it in the past, like it's all of a sudden there's like an unlocked memory page,
Yeah.
right? That unlocks like, oh yeah, I remember that, and then we did this, and this is what happens. And right now, I don't know how we tap into that. I think it would be kind of interesting to do that because I think it would really help with onboarding. You get a new person and you have so much experience walk out the door. We talk about this a lot in our world because people stay a long time, and it just feels like you kind of never get that. Like even if you do get it, it just takes like someone's got to be there 10 years before they kind of get that, that experience level that really like starts to like really impact and help their job. I mean, do you agree with that? No, or
Yeah, no, we definitely have some of that. We've got people that have been on a system for 30 plus years. We've got one person I know of where he's built a lot of the infrastructure for our electrical grid or been part of it. And he's just got that core knowledge. The guy's name's Dale. Like I can ask Dale something and he can spout it off. He's almost like an AI guy because he remembers everything. But if I had to go look through the diagrams to find where something's at, good luck with that.
Yeah, and there's just so much right now. I bet of what we need to be, what documentation we need to have, we have 10% of what we need. There's 90% of the stuff that we do on like an everyday basis that is not written down anywhere. It is like built into people's minds. It's passed down from generation to generation. It's experience learned over the last like 10 years. I'm not saying that's a necessarily good thing. I think we need to document better than we do. But how would it, like right now, let's just say, would we have someone like, the problem, like I said, the problem is I don't think you could take someone like you've dealt with so many things at Fort County, but I couldn't like take you in a room and be like, tell me everything you dealt with at Fort County. Like it can't just be pulled like that. We're not a database. Humans, we kind of write stuff down periodically. We can't just do like a dump, brain dump. All right, here's everything I know. It's unfortunate, I guess. Sometimes that would be awful handy to remember something. Half the time we're like, what was that thing again? But how do you get that? How do you get that lost documentation, let's say, into a model? And that's where I think we're getting there, but like there's still some hurdles to accomplish. I think it, at least like what we're seeing generally across the board, I think there's some amazing stuff happening, but as it gets more specific, I think it gets tougher. Maybe kind of like a bell curve, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As we get kind of the early stuff, it was really hard. As we're kind of getting into the meat of it, it's getting easier and we're taking in like so much. But as we kind of like really drive that like blow you away value, that is where at least we are and what we've experienced so far. I'm not saying that won't change because things are changing, but just not, we don't see that there right now. Maybe it's tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier. I do think as far as AI is concerned, we're in its infancy. There was a podcast I was listening to. I listened to way too many podcasts, but one I was listening to, it was basically it was an entrepreneur and the CEO, and he had like thousands of hours in blog posts and like thousands of hours in YouTube videos. And so he had it like basically transcribe all of his YouTube videos and then it would
Mm-hmm.
ingest his data from his blogs. And he actually uses it kind of like a virtual version of himself to handle some of the smaller things. And as far as the training, I said a couple of good examples. I can give you some terrible examples in which AI said that it was telling me the truth, and I said, "You're hallucinating. Stop hallucinating." And it would say, "Okay, I will reference your documentation and will not do that again." And it would still come up with a hallucination after that. I've seen the bad stuff, and I don't trust anything that's coming out of it without validating it. But just being in the early years, I don't think it's going to be that much longer before we get there. Now, do I think it's going to be a year? No. But I think in 5 years, it's gonna be a big thing. So I think with big companies, a lot of them are gonna start having either local AI or cloud instances and be able to train off their data. And I was just thinking, down the road, like the smaller companies, in some ways we are advanced, but in some ways we're not. But, I think for like small, medium organizations, if we had, if it was fiscally feasible, to have a local AI and to train it and all of our stuff, like that would be awesome. Like if so, Dale, I'll just throw my Dale example. Now, granted, hardly any percentage is in his Outlook account, but if it could ingest all of his Outlook emails and take that correspondence and have it. Now, I'm not saying we would want to do that for a lot. There's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. But, like there's some stuff where we've had some major construction and stuff, and that data is in Outlook, like, and he references it kind of like a filing cabinet between that and, there's a whole lot of people where, you can't record them with AI and stuff like that. But, like if you had like all these meetings, like say we're like with our FIS migration that we did, our financial information system migration, if we had every single call, had it transcribed by AI, could ask it questions to like validate stuff like that would be a huge help to kind of reference things. And then just all the changes we did have one little hiccup where we made a bunch of permission changes and we didn't document it, and they did an update and we lost some of those individual permissions, and then we went rolled it out, we had some permission issues, but if we had like all these meetings recorded and stuff like that and have that, like that would have been super easy to recover. Now, granted, it's kind of like you said, like we just do a better job of documenting ourselves, but like you said, we just don't have enough people to do everything we want to do.
Let's play it out in a world. Let's say the worst of the worst happens and AI starts taking everyone's job. Do you think humans would fight back by basically not recording their conversations? By like doing everything in person,
Yeah,
talking in person, never putting anything in Outlook, never putting anything in Office chat, like forcing themselves to go analog. Like it made me think about it. There's a while back, Israel pulled off this thing where they blew up all the pagers of, and I can't even remember the details now, but they created pagers
yeah,
basically go off at a certain time that would kill certain people. The reason they did that is because they got so advanced in hacking the cellular transmissions of this group that the group actually went analog. And because they went back to analog pagers, it actually became more difficult to track them and to like intercept their conversations and to figure out what was going on. So let's just say, I don't know, let's say we get into Terminator. We're Terminator, Skynet, it's taking over. Is that do humans fight back that way, I guess? I don't know.
yeah. Like I see what you're saying, and there's instances of that, but I guess it depends on where we're at. But just the we could go back to pen and paper any day, and if you have some natural disaster or you get hacked, you may be forced to go back to pen and paper. The reason we don't do that is just because it's so inefficient.
Yeah, but could we, think about it like would humans make themselves less efficient? I don't know. At the same time, maybe the flip side of that is that makes AI even more efficient, right? So
Yeah,
I was getting like you 5x return. Now everything I'm doing is getting a 10x return because of the inefficiency. I don't know. I mean, I think there does need to be a discussion on healthy regulation. I don't know where it is. And maybe this is just me being pessimistic about the world. I was talking with my dad about this a while back, and it's like we're getting to a point in our world where if someone states something, someone writes an article. I just saw a podcast about a guy who says he believes that he needs to talk about AI because he thinks like the worst of the worst is going to happen. Are we getting so cynical or so pessimistic about the world that I don't honestly know that I hardly can believe anyone?
yeah,
I'm sitting here and I see that thing come up, and then the back of my mind goes to what's his angle? What's his angle? Was he like ostracized by the community? Does he feel like he really deserved more credit for it than he did? And so now he's going to try to make more of a name for himself. I think about politicians a lot, and a lot of times they say stuff they don't even believe because they just like want more clout. And I'm beginning to wonder if have we gotten to a point where like the selfish desires of an individual person are so that like it's hard to understand what to believe? Do we just not we almost don't believe anything that is said? And so it's like hard to know, are we in a lot better place with AI or are we in like a lot worse place with AI because I don't know that I can believe anyone that's published anything about it. Does that make sense? I don't know.
yeah. One of the positive things, and I've heard it both ways. I've heard doom and gloom, and I've heard positive things. Talk about this, and like I said, I listen to way too many podcasts, but I don't think this is too controversial. But a lot of the countries, I don't think the United States is impacted right now, but the people today are not having as many kids, and in certain countries, I've heard, especially with like China, where they had the one child rule, and even Russia, but there's several countries where they just don't have enough young people. And if even in the US, like, I think, if you look at the amount of boomers versus, the whatever generation we're on now, like there's just a lot less of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, for right now, I'd look at AI as got to be looked at as a positive thing. And there was always the talk, before AI, like people were talking about the population dwindling, and it causing issues, especially in certain countries, not so much the US, but some of the other countries. And this is the invention, the genius that's going to help, kind of bridge that gap. Cause, I don't think it's no secret. Everyone agrees that, AI can be a force multiplier in some
Mm-hmm.
aspects.
Yeah.
So like short term, like I do kind of side on that. Like I hate to see someone automated out of a job, but with less younger people, like AI, may help us get by and continue to carry the torch and progress.
I mean, I agree with you. I think I don't know. We were talking before we even started this, and this has been an interesting conversation, by the way. But we talked about before to kind of break things down into maybe like short, intermediate, long term. So short to me, I would say maybe it's 5 years.
Yeah.
Intermediate would be maybe like 5 to 15, and then long term would be, let's call it plus 15. Short term, there's definitely going to be impact. I think exactly what you're talking about is going to be huge. I think we're still a lot to learn, and I know AI agents are becoming a thing, and in reality, like there's been a lot of improvements in AI, I would say in the last couple years, but it still hasn't been the drastic jump. It's gotten a lot more accurate. Like gotten more accurate. We can do more. There's a lot more different types of models, so I think there has been a huge jump, but I think compared to maybe some of the doomers early on, it hasn't been as much as that, but it
Yeah.
also hasn't been, insignificant. So I think short term, there's going to be us learning about what really is possible. Intermediate term, I see a lot of what you're talking about. I mean, you're going to see people retire, and I think maybe either if they can't find, I think about co-ops especially, but any type of small medium business organization. Sometimes you can't find. I mean, how many times have you heard that like we can't find someone for this role because it's like too specialized and they don't want to live out in the middle of nowhere? So
Heard
is
it
that
just
going to
last
be an
week.
advantage? Yeah, there you go. Is that going to be an advantage? Like maybe we can help someone who maybe doesn't have quite the talent become, so we still hire someone. We just aren't able, we're not hiring that expert. We're allowing AI to help us like create the expert or at least offset some of that. Long term, I think there is going to be some pretty drastic impact. I'll go back to my story. I don't think I'm in a position, and I don't think many people, if almost nobody, is in a position to tell you what things will look like in 25 years. I think anytime someone tells you what something's going to be like in 25 years with like utmost certainty, I think you almost can basically completely discount them because it's just the world doesn't work that way. So I don't know where we'll go, but I am a firm believer that like there are problems to be solved that we're not solving now. And so if we can spend more time solving that, or even if AI helps us solve some of those problems, if we can have those people enact the solutions, like and I'm not saying robots. I've seen some of the robotic stuff too. It's come a long way. There's been some really cool stuff come out in robotics recently, but it is not the same right now. I think we're even farther off. Maybe I'll put it this way. I think we're farther off with robotics than we are with AI, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So I still think there's got to be a lot of doing the solutions, even if AI is doing a lot of analysis. Also, to your point, you got to be checking up on behind stuff. You need like that industry knowledge to like verify at least that it's in the ballpark. I don't know. I think I'll settle on what I settled was that the impact is going to be longer than a lot of people think before it happens and shorter than many others. I think there will definitely be impact, but I heard in a podcast recently, and it wasn't specifically talking about AI, but it said human beings, this is I'm paraphrasing, human beings are terrible at preventing what's coming, but we're experts at adapting to what is happening. That basically, like, we are not, like, if AI is coming, we're not going to prevent AI from happening. We're terrible at that kind of stuff, but we're very, very good at adapting to different circumstances. And that's where I'll kind of leave us, at least with me, is I think we will adapt. I don't know how that adaptation looks like. I don't know what that conversation looks like, but maybe, I don't know, who knows? Maybe my kids, we go back to farming and we just live a simple life. We grow our own food. I mean, and maybe that's where it is, and we just leave all that other stuff alone. I don't know. I don't know where we head and where we land, but I know one thing that I don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. There's a couple things short term I've heard some discussion on. Have you heard the term vibe coding?
I'm kidding. No, I haven't heard that one.
So it's the term for basically using AI to code, just like either by speaking it or telling it what you want to do, and it just generates the code. Now,
Yeah.
granted, I that's one of those things where if you don't know how to code, like how are you double checking that stuff like that?
Yeah.
You know what's actually happening. That and just I think like prompt engineering, I do think that's something that will come out the not just going to chat GPT and tell you what to type or whatever, but just someone to kind of I don't know, just kind of like an AI specialist in the field. I could see that coming in the short term. Long term, one thing that I think it got a lot of publicity, and I forget, I don't know if it was a 2016 election or whatever year Andrew Yang. I don't know if you remember. I can't remember. He was like the
Hmm.
CEO or something like that, or entrepreneur, and he talked about like universal income. And when I heard it, I was like, that seems kind of crazy. And his thing was, is at some point, like there's just going to be a bunch of people that are jobless. And this was, I mean, I'm pretty sure this was before ChatGPT was known or even in existence. I don't know. And he was talking about that. I think it was 2016 when that came around. I think today, like people wouldn't. I think you got a lot of looks like you're crazy to have universal income for people, but now it's long term. What happens if this many people are displaced? Kind of what you said earlier. That I do think companies are going to take advantage of this, and the rich are going to get richer, and the poor are going to get poorer to some degree. And I think this will just really exacerbate that, or it can. And anyways, that's just something I was thinking about long term. But like you said, I
Yeah,
don't. There's no way to know which way that's going to go.
I agree with you. I think for us, and I agree on the prompt engineering, and I've talked to a lot of people, at least, as we've been kind of thinking about deploying different things that have never used AI before. I think in our industry, I don't know, I'm going to say 10%, 15% have even used it personally or otherwise.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of, they're kind of learning. But I think for now, and I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to say for our organization that I think, at least as far as I can influence, that an organization that takes advantage of AI is going to outperform an organization that doesn't. Where everything lands 15 years from now, 20 years from now, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is the organizations that just decide to put their head in the sand and don't do anything about it
yeah,
are going to fall behind
yeah,
very drastically. And to your point, like the richer get richer and the poor get poorer. I don't think a richer in like financial means, but a richer in thought or in vision and strategy. So for us, while I'm curious to see what regulation might take place, what impact might have we might have out of like the next generation. I think agent based AI is one of it seems like maybe it's the coming next kind of gen. I don't know where it's gonna go, but I know for me and what in my role, I've got to help lead us to embrace this. And if we don't, it's not gonna be we're keeping ourselves from the impact. I think it in some ways it almost will impact us worse by ignoring it.
yeah. I agree with that. This is one thing where we're trying to embrace it ourselves, but I'm also pushing our vendors to embrace it. And I think that's one of those things you said. If those that don't use it, they're gonna fall behind.
Mm.
With our vendors, like we're they're not just vendors to us. They're almost like family, not just
Yeah.
vendors, like it or not. And I really implore them to be investigating in AI and leveraging it to make you more efficient, and also to help us, do the things that we need to do or want to do.
No, I mean, interesting conversation. I think we had a good little episode here. I think maybe final thoughts. You got any final thoughts on the AI debate? Did we solve the world's problems tonight?
Just for those young people, I would definitely think about what you're going into. I
Yeah.
do worry about the younger generation much more so. It's one of those things where, if you didn't go to college, it was kind of looked down upon. I don't know if that's going to be the case. And where smart people can actually just leverage AI and learn and do so much with it. And, is college a waste for, someone that is looking to get in technology these days? Are they better off just dive doing a deep dive into AI and trying to leverage it to?
Yeah. Well, I think the flip side, I heard someone say they you should look more in the trades, and I would say, are you going to be able to afford someone to fix your plumbing or your HVAC system if you're not doing your other job that pays pretty well? You're
Yeah,
probably going to be doing all that yourself. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, I don't think we don't have the answers, and it's fun to speculate, but at least in my career, and it's I'm kind of nearing close to the halfway point here at this point. I've been amazed with a lot of technology, and I've been, I guess, disappointed with how limiting there's still a lot of limits to our technology. Maybe AI is the key to unlock that. I don't know. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I think the best thing to do is have an open mind, have an eager mind to learn. We talk about that when we hire new people. Is willingness to learn is really kind of one of the most important things. So I'm going to kind of buy into that, right? And learn all I can and see where these things take us.
Yeah. One thing, and I think we've made this comparison in the past, AI, in some ways, it reminds me of when the cloud came out. And there was those people that they were like all in, or like, we're gonna move everything to the cloud. And then there were some where I'm not putting anything in the cloud. And there were people out there screaming from the rooftops that in 10 years you're not gonna have any systems local, everything's gonna be in the cloud. And it's not the case. I'm not saying there's some organizations out there that don't. But also, those people that drug their feet and fought putting stuff in the cloud, everyone's got something in the cloud these days. Like I haven't seen an
Hmm.
organization that doesn't. So I think you're right. There's no way to truly predict it, and the answers will lie somewhere in the middle of all this speculation. But I do like your thought on just trying to embrace it and learn from it, leverage it. I think that's important. If people were to have done that with the cloud, like those are the people that are more successful. I think with AI, the same thing is going to come. Just trying to embrace it.
Tried something new. We'll see. For those listening, we'll see what you think about it. Let us know as we post this out. Started a conversation below. I'd like to hear what everyone else's thoughts are. So as we post this out on social media, if you have some thoughts on what we talked about, or where you think AI is going, or where you think the future is going in an AI connected and enabled world, drop them down below and let us know what you think. Or if you want to reach out to us, and you can always do that at Show It Off the Wire podcast. Tell us, give us feedback, give us an idea for a new episode. Anthony, we tried something new. I think it worked. We'll see what others think as we publish this just a little bit. And so, yeah, let us know what you think. So, this has been another episode of Off the Wire.
Thank you, everyone.